Welcome back to Bajan Renovation. It's a new year and a new season. Speaking of New Year's, I know this is the time when many of us set goals, and getting on the property ladder is usually one of those goals. For some, it's a walk in the park, others a little daunting. But either way, I'm going to share 3 things that you can do to position yourself well on the property ladder. As an example, I am going to be showing some of the details, or should I say sharing some of the details of my recent valuation. Yes, we got back our numbers, and I'll be letting you know what's been going on at the house. I'm Kelly Johnley, and this is Bajan Renovation. All right, guys, it's been a few weeks, but I hope it's been worth the wait. Thank you for keeping my company in the stories and in the DMs as I settled into the house. I'd say that I am roughly at 90% there. Of course, you know, as you use a space, as you entertain, etc., you see the gaps, but I'm happy to be in and happy to continue sharing updates with you. Now, getting on the property ladder is a significant investment, and to best prepare yourself for the process, this is the hill I am prepared to die on. Go and get pre-qualified. Okay? Whether you want to buy right now or you want to buy later in the year, get pre-qualified. Pre-qualifying for a mortgage is an initial step in the home buying process where the lender evaluates your financial situation to give you an estimate of how much you might be able to borrow. This is not a guarantee of loan approval, rather it is an assessment of your financial readiness, and also it will let you know how much money, based on where you are now, how much you are qualified to borrow from that lender based on the information you have provided. But there are more benefits to this. Pre-qualification is an estimate of borrowing power. Based on the information provided, the lender gives an estimate of the loan amount you might qualify for. Now, pre-qualification is a relatively simple, doesn't cost anything, process. You will reach out to your preferred lender. It could be a bank, it could be a credit union. I'd say start with where you have an account and tell them that you want to pre-qualify for a mortgage. And they're going to send you a list of things that they'll need you to provide. You may not even have to come into the bank or the credit union to get this process started. Now, there are a few things that they are going to ask for. They are going to ask for proof of income, evidence of debts, proof of assets, and they may take a look at your credit history. Now, proof of income. The most obvious one is the job letter. But here's something I need you to keep in mind. Many of us have side businesses or side hustles. If you want the income that you are making from your side business, side hustle to be considered as part of your income for your borrowing amount, I need you to keep this in mind. The bank cannot assess what it cannot review. So telling them that you make an extra $1,500 a month doing dressmaking, if you have no deposits in an account to show for it, they won't be able to use that income. Fortunately, before I even started my second property journey, a banker told me to open a separate account under my business name, and it was very simple. I had registered a business, as many of you have done, and they allowed me to change my checking account to my business name. This allowed me to invoice in my business name. It also allowed me to receive funds into a business account. It therefore meant when I went forward for this property, they were able to see income coming into the account to support the purchase, keeping in mind that I already had 2 mortgages. At the time I was employed, I was a full-time employee at a company, so they had a job letter, but my job letter alone would not have qualified me for the 3rd mortgage. If you want this money to be considered, you have to be able to provide a trail for the bank to trace. Now, this is particularly important if you deal with a lot of cash. Now, my business has always primarily been a business-to-business operation, so I rarely receive cash in hand. If you receive a lot of cash in hand, I beg you, please make a habit of depositing the money. It doesn't matter if you deposit in it to pull it back out, but when you do go to the bank and you're asking them to use the income from other sources to supplement the amount that you want to qualify for, at least they can look into your account and see a transaction history. Okay, do yourself a favor from now, even if you're not trying to get on the property ladder but you have a side hustle, get in the habit of either depositing to a business account or start depositing the cash into your account so that they can trace it. The next thing they want to assess is your debt. The bank is going to do what you call a debt service ratio, and it is based on existing debts. They're going to want to know if you have a car loan, if you have any hire purchase accounts, if you have any credit cards, all of those things they are going to ask about. What I would say to you, of course you will never do these things, but just in case you were considering it, do not lie. Because what's going to happen is that even if the bank doesn't do a formal credit check at the time of doing a pre-qualification, when you are pre-qualified and you move towards the mortgage process, they are going to do the pre-qualification assessment very thoroughly then. They are going to go ahead and get any credit checks done. So if you know that you got money for courts and you got money for Signia and you got a credit card, don't not declare it at this point. It's going to slow down your process when you are now moving towards a mortgage. Another thing they're going to look at is your assets, and that could be a vehicle that you own. They might look at furniture. They look at insurance policies. If you have any annuities, they also look at cash in hand. Do you have a piece of land? Do you own any properties already? So any assets that you may have, they're also going to want to assess that. And they are going to use all of that information to establish what they call your debt service level, and from that they'll be able to tell you, based on what you provided, how much they are willing to lend you. Once that is done, they're going to give you a pre-qualification letter. This letter is usually valid, I think, 3 to 6 months, and it's going to stay on the condition that the information that you provided remains the same. So don't think that if you get a pre-qualification letter with your job letter saying that you working for $10,000 a month and you lost the job, they're going to check. But here is why you need this letter. 1, you will not know what you can afford until you're formally told on paper. 2, you may get back some feedback from the bank that they may say, hey, you may say you want to purchase a house that has a mortgage payment of $3,000 a month, or you might want to purchase a house in the vicinity of $400,000, but yet they're telling you that you only qualify for $300,000. You can, 1, adjust your sales and look for properties in a lower price bracket, or you can ask them what they think you should do to put you in a position to purchase a property at a higher value. Because sometimes it's nice to have an independent eye go through your finances with you, particularly someone who's trying to do business with you, and they might be able to say, look, if you can clear off this credit card debt, we'd be able to increase the amount. If you are able to clear the vehicle, this amount. Can you increase the amount for the deposit, and that will allow us to increase our lending amount? Have the conversation. So in addition to knowing how much you can borrow, here's the other thing, which is a real kicker. Many realtors will not take the time to take you through the property hunt process beyond inviting you to an open house unless you are pre-qualified. It is literally like going to the supermarket, filling your trolley with goods, getting to the trolley, getting to the cashier tell you that your bill is $350, and then you're going to say, all right, hold on, let me go home and see if I got it and come back. That is what it is like. And what you'll realize is that when you're in the property market, you're not the only person out there looking at properties. And if you don't have a letter, in addition to not being taken seriously by a seller, probably not even being taken seriously by a realtor, you now will lose out to somebody else who's in the property market who is more ready than you are, because you can't request an offer letter and action it. If you're in the property market and you have a pre-qualification letter, let's say you go and see a house for $250,000, you can now tell the bank, you could now tell the seller, look, I'm willing to make an offer for $230,000. I'm pre-approved by the bank. You already know what's going to happen. They're going to give you an offer letter. This is the seller now, or the seller's attorney or realtor is going to give you a letter which you will take to the bank. The bank is going to say, oh yeah, look, Jason is qualified for this amount, and all things being equal, they will respond to the seller letting them know that they are the bank who's working on your behalf to advance the sale. If you don't have that information, I promise you, the seller is going to go with who is ready. And if you now have to start getting your account information, sending in your ID, you are not in this game. Okay? Get the letter, know where you stand, and be in a position to act. Now for number 2, this is the fun part. Now, I've been pretty fortunate 3 times running to get properties below listing price or offer price. That is the advertised price for the property. Now, this comes down to asking the right questions. It comes down to timing, but asking the right questions. Before you bolt along with your pre-qualification letter, everybody don't need to know how much you pre-qualified for. You need to know. Before you bolt along saying, okay, I am pre-qualified for $450,000, I'm offering $450,000, keep this in mind. It's a bit of an investor's mindset, but understand this. You make your money on the purchase price. Yes, I know people say that, you know, your home is your biggest investment. I always say it's your biggest financial commitment. If you want a home that has equity in it, that it turns out to be something that you can pay off quickly or can truly be an asset in the sense that it may be rented out and bringing in income, or something that you can sell in the not too distant future and make a profit from, you need to really pay attention to what you pay for at the purchase price. Okay, now that is not to say that the price is the most important thing, because you know sometimes it's not. You may have an affinity to a parish, you may want to live near family, you may want to live near to a certain commute. That's fine, but as far as the price goes, here are some things that I'd like you to either know, keep in mind, or ask before you go bolting ahead telling them what you are going to offer. So here's the first thing. Understanding the seller's motivation can provide valuable insight into their urgency to sell and potential flexibility on the price. The reason for selling might reveal hidden problems with the property, such as structural issues or frequent flooding. Knowing this upfront can support your argument for a reduced price, or also make you aware of any renovation costs down the line. Another question you should ask is, how long has a property been on the market? A seller who has had a property on the market for a while tends to be what you call a motivated seller. They want to get rid of the property. If a property has been on the market for a long time, the seller might be willing to negotiate terms, or at least a better price. Knowing if there are any competing offers can help you gauge the level of interest and urgency needed for your offer. What I can tell you about the house that we're in, the Bajan Renovation house, is that it was on the property, I was told, for almost a year. And at the time that I, along with some others, had come to see it, the seller had received an offer, and for some reason, I don't know the details, the offer fell through. When I came to view this property, 3 other people came at the same time. I don't know how interested they were, but I was ready. Meaning that I knew that I was already pre-qualified, and while I was not pre-qualified, or at least I should say willing to pay the asking price, which was $250,000, based on asking these and some other questions I'll continue to share. Another thing you should ask is what is included in the sale. And you might think that's very obvious. In the house, not necessarily. Clarity in terms of what fixtures, fittings, appliances are included need to be discussed to avoid any misunderstandings. Quite often, properties are shown furnished, but you should not assume that furniture is coming or appliances are coming with the sale. Also, there might be patio furniture or semi-fixed things to the house. Like, let's say a garage. You might have a garage that was set up outside but not attached to the house. Find out what you are buying, okay? Find out for sure before you say you're taking it. You also should ask if there have been any recent repairs or renovations. Recent work can add value, but knowing the details also helps you assess the quality and necessity of future renovations. Here's a big one, and this is where I find working with a seller who has a realtor is helpful. Can you provide all the utility costs, property taxes, and documents for the house? Saying that someone telling you that they are willing to sell a property is not enough. They need to have the deeds for the house. They need to have any documents pertaining to land tax for the house. They need to be able to demonstrate to you that they own the house, not just live there, that they own it and that they are in a position to sell it. Usually when you're dealing with a realtor, or should I said, any good realtor would have done that due diligence for you. And of course, there is the price. I always say, ask what the price, that is the list price, is usually open for discussion. Once you know what you are pre-qualified for and you're willing to put forward, have a discussion. Take into consideration the information you got from the questions I suggested that you ask, and from there, not only determine if you still want to buy the property, but what you think is a fair price based on what you may need to do. Part of my negotiation process was that, well, we all know, we could see there was a lot of work to be done on the house, and for some people that was a turn off. I had the wherewithal to do it, but for someone who is qualified for, let's say, $250,000, because that is what the list price for this was, a bank is not going to lend you property. Or let me not speak for all banks. A bank is unlikely to lend you money to purchase a property that is in an advanced state of disrepair or is unlivable if you cannot demonstrate that you A, can borrow additional funds for the repair, or B, had the cash to hand to facilitate some or all of the repairs. Again, that is why the price matters and asking these questions matter. If you now go and make an offer on a house for $250,000 and you buy it for $240,000 and you now have to do renovations for $60,000, but the bank ain't lending you the additional $60,000, you're not in the running. Speak to the bank in terms of how much you could, what's the maximum you can borrow, and keep that in mind in terms of what you want to move forward with, particularly if you have to go and inject additional funds for a renovation. Now to the meat of the matter, my people, the property valuation. As a part of closing out this renovation process, the property had to be revalued again. So this is now the third property valuation I have had for this property. The first one would have been when I did the purchase, where the seller was able to provide a recent valuation that said that the property was valued at $250,000. So as is, when I purchased it, when we met each other, this property was valued at $250,000. Then from there, as you know, we negotiated based on the questions and discussions that I would have shared with you, and we purchased for $195,000. The second valuation would have come somewhere around just past the midpoint of this renovation. The valuation was done so that I could get the second and final disbursement from the bank. Now remember, I would have shared previously that it's really important to understand how funds are dispersed when you're doing a renovation. You do not necessarily get all the money at one time. Now, I would have gotten my first phase of the funds at the beginning, and it was about $40,000. And that was to cover everything, including roof repairs. And you're like, what roof repairs were supposed to be done for $40,000? Well, remember, in my initial quotation and proposal to the bank, I was repairing the ceiling. When the bank saw that I took off the whole roof, removed the side wall, and had embarked on my own spiritual journey, renovating this house, that's all I could call it now, my own spiritual journey, they called me in and said, look, you will get your final disbursement, but you need to bring the house back in line with the renovation that we have committed to. I.e., you need to put back on this roof and seal up this house, because there's nothing in the funds that we have allocated for this renovation that included the repair of the enclosure of a house because you removed a side wall or replacing an entire roof. So when I was able to get the roof back on and the house sealed up, the valuer came again. And at that time, he gave a value of the property. This is just the house now sealed up, doors on, roof on, nothing painted, no nice things. That was $313,000. In that valuation, he also gave an estimate of what would be required as an injection to bring the house up to what you call a practical completion. Now, a practical completion means that includes that your electricals are working, your plumbing is done, your tiling is done, your interior walls are painted, you have toilet facilities, you have a kitchen. This has nothing to do with how nicely you furnish your place, what colors you use on the wall, what type of countertop you have. A practical completion is what you call the standard for having a house called complete. So that was my second valuation. It said $313,000 at the time, and another $54,000 to get it to practical completion. Now that I have gotten back the valuation, the property is valued at $401,600. Now, I'm pleased with that because you need to take something into consideration that the valuation has noted. The yard has not been done, and they have cited that the property at the back, the apartment, is in an advanced state of disrepair. So I am comfortable, at least from an investor's angle, that once I do the yard, which I intend to do, and repair the backyard, repair the apartment, which I intend to do, the property value will continue to increase. So I'm comfortable with that. I knew from the bank's perspective that they needed to ensure that I would at least be able to renovate and bring the property to a value that covered their interests. Remember, they need to make sure that the amount of money they lent to me was reflected in the property. By the time I got on our very, very high roof and was able to seal up the property and was able to present that midpoint valuation of $313,000, considering that we borrowed like too little bit from them, they were comfortable. That doesn't mean that I could not finish the house. That's not what this discussion was ever going to be. But in terms of their financial interest in the property, they were comfortable that their interests were secured. It therefore meant I had to finish the house, and here we are now at $401,000. I will do the yard, which will then again increase the value, and I will also do the apartment. Now, this valuation has been submitted to the bank, and it now formally closes out the renovation process. Their team member, Sonia Stewart, who's my mortgage advisor, she came in and she also did an inspection, because they do come to confirm that what is in the valuation is at least reflected in the physical property. Because you know, there's always that one person that spoiled it for all of us, right? So she came along, and at the time I actually broached the conversation with her about a home equity loan. Now, I'll discuss in detail what a home equity loan is, but what it is in a nutshell is that you're borrowing against the equity of the property that you have. Now, just me doing a rough math on the valuations that I have. This is the valuation for this house, which is currently $401,000, and then I have the two in Coverly, which they're both around $400,000. That therefore means the value of the properties I'm holding is $1.2 million. I presently owe the bank $470,000, which therefore means my equity position in the property is the $1.2 million less the $470,000. I wish to borrow some of that equity to finish the property. Now, I do know that I was saying that I will take my time and finish the yard and the apartment out of pocket. In a way, I would still like to do that, but as I would have shared with you, I am working with an accountant. And last year, when we did the finances for my business and I got a good sense of how much money I spent on this house, the process in which I did this is not sustainable. It does not work for the business. I can't have a business where I'm taking so much money out of the business, like so much money out, and not put it into something that brings money back into the business. It's just reflected as this big massive drawing. For those of you who know accounting terms, is when the owner takes money out of a business, right? All you just seen is the money coming out. So in order to draw a clear line between what are my personal expenses and my business expenses, the suggestion was made, Kelly, you need to get a home equity loan for this property, finish it, and stop taking the money out of the business, or else you're going to have the financial challenges that you had in 2025 this year. So that is where we are with the house. But there was this one line in the valuation that made me smile, and I'll share it with you. I mean, we can laugh at this now, but we all know that this thing brought me, I don't know, I can't even say to tears. You know when you're so shocked and stunned by an experience that that you can't even cry? So why I would like you to pay attention to your valuation is that a lot of people usually only pay attention to price. Your valuation is going to share with you the covenants in an area. For example, you may be looking at a property to start a business. You can't put a business in every neighborhood or in every property. It will also let you know about any encroachments. Is someone's boundary lines over on yours? Has someone built onto your property? It's also going to give you a good sense of what comparable properties are in the area. So if you're looking at it for investment purposes, your valuer will do an assessment on the area to say what other properties of a similar profile have sold for. Your valuation is also going to assess the depreciation, i.e. the wear and tear on the property. Because to us with the naked eye, a lot of people just look at paint. If a house is painted, it looks new. But your valuer will be able to tell you, look, the lifespan of a house is what, 30, anywhere between 30 and 50 years. Kelly, you only got 4 or 5 years left in this. Do you want to take on this property, considering you're probably going to need significant renovations soon? So when I bought the house, the valuation said that the house was a mature property, built 50 years ago, and that it needed immediate repair. The current valuation says the main house is a completely rebuilt single-story building. Y'all let down the whole house and build it back. So while this house may have originally been built 50 years ago, she is now a new house because you all completely rebuilt the house, okay? We can laugh at this now, but I'm sure Shaka will show you an image of when this house ain't had no roof, no sidewall, and this was not funny. I say all this to say that your valuation has more than the price in it. Please, if you are if you're interested, seriously interested in a property, you have the right to ask for a current valuation. And you are going to take home that valuation and you are going to read it slowly. You're going to look at the price that they're asking for. You're going to look at comparable prices. You're going to look at what areas of repair have been identified, and you are going to make an informed decision, because we want you to make property decisions with clarity and confidence. I'm Kelly Johnley, and this is Bajan Renovation.